You are sitting around the fire right now. Not literally, but the reason you can understand these words, the reason you have a brain large enough to process language, abstract thought, and the concept of what if, is because your ancestors sat around fires for hundreds of thousands of years. Take the fire away and you don't just lose warmth. You lose your brain, you lose language, you lose sleep, you lose society. You lose the version of Homo sapiens that eventually built cities, wrote books, and started asking questions like this one. Without fire, you don't exist. Not as you, not as anything close. Here's why. Let's start with something that sounds impossible. Fire made your brain bigger. Not metaphorically, literally. The shift from raw food to cooked food, which only happened because of fire, is one of the primary drivers of the dramatic increase in human brain size over the last million years. Here's the biology. Your brain is the most metabolically expensive organ in your body. It consumes roughly 20% of your total calorie intake, despite being only 2% of your body weight. Running a brain this size requires enormous amounts of energy, and raw food simply doesn't deliver enough of it efficiently enough. Cooking changes that. Heat breaks down the cellular walls of food before it enters your body. It pre-digests proteins and starches. A cooked sweet potato delivers nearly twice the usable calories of a raw one in the same sitting. The result? Cooking freed up massive amounts of energy that your digestive system no longer needed to spend. That energy got redirected over generations, over hundreds of thousands of years, into building larger, more complex brains. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham puts it plainly. Cooking is what made us human. Not tools, not language, cooking. No fire, no cooking. No brain large enough to develop either of those things. Here's one you've never thought about. Fire changed how humans sleep. Every other primate sleeps in trees, not because they enjoy it, but because the ground at night is where predators are. Sleeping low means dying. So chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, they build nests in branches, wedge themselves into forks in trees, and sleep in positions that are never fully relaxed, because falling is always a risk. Fire ended that. A fire on the ground keeps predators away, not because animals are afraid of the flame itself, but because fire means humans are awake, aware, and dangerous. A fire is a signal. This camp is defended. So for the first time in primate evolution, humans could sleep on the ground. Flat, fully, safely. And that unlocked something profound. REM sleep. Deep, extended, uninterrupted REM sleep. The stage where memory consolidates, where creative connections form, where the brain runs its maintenance cycle. Fire didn't just let us sleep, it let us dream. And dreaming is how your brain processes, connects, and builds on everything it learned that day. Without fire, your ancestors slept shallow, short, and scared. The brain that runs on that sleep is a fundamentally different and lesser brain than the one you're using right now. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Fire created the evening. Before fire, when the sun went down, human activity essentially stopped. There was nothing to do in the dark except sleep or be eaten. The day ended at sunset, every day, for millions of years. Fire pushed that boundary back by 3 to 4 hours. Suddenly there was light after dark, and with light came something entirely new. Unstructured social time. Anthropologists who study hunter-gatherer societies that still use firelight observe something consistent. Daytime conversation is almost entirely practical. Food, tools, logistics, plans. But evening conversation around a fire is something else. It's storytelling, myth, speculation. What if? Fire didn't just illuminate the night. It created the conditions for culture, for oral tradition, for the transmission of knowledge from one generation to the next. Every story ever told, every myth ever invented, every piece of human wisdom ever passed from parent to child traces its origin back to someone sitting in firelight with nothing immediately threatening them and time to think. Without fire, there is no evening. Without evenings, there is no culture. Without culture, there is no accumulated human knowledge. Language and fire are more connected than almost anyone realizes. The prevailing theory for decades was that language emerged as a tool for coordination, planning hunts, organizing groups. Practical communication first, complexity later. But the firelight hypothesis flips that. If evening storytelling around fires is where abstract thinking flourished, then language didn't develop primarily to coordinate. It developed to narrate, to explain, to speculate, to answer children who asked, why? The storytelling demands of firelight, describing things that weren't present, events that happened in the past, things that might happen in the future, require a fundamentally more complex grammar than there is food or danger, run. You need tense. You need hypotheticals. You need the ability to describe something that doesn't exist yet. No fire, no evenings, no storytelling, no grammar, no language as we know it. And without language, the next step never happens either. So let's actually go there. First, no cooked food. Human brain size doesn't increase. Homo sapiens, if the species emerges at all, has a brain roughly the size of Homo erectus. Capable, tool-using, adaptive, but not capable of complex language, abstract planning, or cumulative culture. Second, no safe ground sleep. Humans remain tree-sleeping, shallow REM creatures. Learning is slower. Knowledge doesn't accumulate. Third, no evenings, no storytelling, no oral tradition. Knowledge dies with individuals rather than being passed down. Each generation essentially starts over. Fourth, no warmth. Human migration out of Africa is limited. The colonization of Europe, Central Asia, Siberia, the Americas either doesn't happen or happens tens of thousands of years later. The world in this scenario still has hominins, probably still has Homo sapiens of a kind. But they're creatures of the forest and the savanna, with simple tools and no capacity to build anything that outlasts their own lifetime. No agriculture, no cities, no writing, no mathematics, no science, no this video. Here's something that makes all of this more unsettling. Fire wasn't inevitable. Every other animal on Earth has encountered fire, from lightning strikes, from volcanic activity. They all do the same thing: run away. The instinct is universal and completely rational. Fire is dangerous. Fire kills. At some point, somewhere in Africa, roughly 1.5 to 2 million years ago, some individual hominid did something that went against every evolutionary instinct it had. Instead of running, it stayed. We don't know who. We don't know exactly when. We don't know if it happened once and spread, or independently dozens of times in different places. But we know this: without that moment, without that one act of not running, the cascade never starts. The brain stays small, the sleep stays shallow, the evenings stay dark, the language stays simple. One individual at some unknown moment didn't do what every instinct told it to do. And here you are. The next time you feel the warmth of something heated, a cooked meal, a lit room, even a screen glowing in the dark, you're experiencing the tail end of a chain that started with one decision made before recorded history. Fire didn't just keep your ancestors warm, it built the brain you're using to understand this sentence. It created the social conditions that produced language, culture, and every piece of knowledge human beings have ever accumulated. Every civilization, every idea, every story ever told. It all started with someone who didn't run.